Okay, our speaker today is Deb Wolf, and she is with Sanford Underground Research Facility, known as SURF, and she's here to talk to us today about a mile underground science and discovery. And she did tell me we are her last presentation, so we feel pretty special. Deb, you want to come on up?
Yeah, a little bittersweet. I retire at the end of the month. So this is it, the final outreach presentation. My name is Deb Wolf. I am the Director of Strategic Partnerships at SURF. I've been with SURF for the last 8 years. I've had the privilege of running all of the various outreach programs from our K-12 education, our visitor center, our internal and external communications. We have an Institute for Underground Science at SURF, our community relations, tribal relations. Those programs have been really the joy of the last 8 years. I am a former high school science teacher. I spent about 20 years in the classroom, was also an instructional coach, and briefly an administrator. It was not my gig, and then had the opportunity to go to SURF. So I say the school teacher thing because over the course of the next little bit, I would love questions. And let's not wait till the end of the presentation. Let's ask those questions as they pop into your head. That's how I function. That's how I operate best. And it also helps me gauge whether what I'm saying is making sense and is connecting with all of you. And I'm not going to lie, I'm a little, I thought, I got some really engaging content, but I learned a lot about birds in the last little bit. So I will do my very best to provide you with some interesting information about what's happening in our state. I will also mention, and I do this especially when I'm on the east side of the state, that the Sanford Underground Research Facility is not affiliated with Sanford Health. The only thing that we have in common is we got some of Denny's money. And so what we do there is dramatically different and not part of the Sanford Health complex. I'm going to actually start with a short video. It's about 3 minutes, and I really like it because I think it tells a complete story of SURF, but I also think the visuals kind of help orient you to where we are and what we're doing.
The Sanford Underground Research Facility, or SURF, is America's deep underground science laboratory. Our mission is to advance world-class science and inspire learning across generations. SURF hosts cutting-edge research in multiple disciplines, including physics, geology, biology, engineering, and more. Work at SURF is contributing to the fundamental understanding of our universe, advancing our nation's energy independence, exploring life in extreme environments, and providing basic research that is the foundation for ongoing technological advancement around the world. SURF's collaborators include over 2,000 scientists from more than 200 national laboratories, institutions, and universities worldwide. SURF also plays a vital role in inspiring the next generation of STEM professionals with a robust education and outreach program that reaches nearly 20,000 students and 400 teachers annually. SURF is generating a $2 billion economic impact on South Dakota this decade alone, with the potential to create 1,200 jobs across the state. We are proud of our history, which includes Nobel Prize-winning research on this site, and we have a bright future with ongoing and planned experiments that will continue to inspire and push the boundaries of human knowledge for decades to come.
All right, so how many of you have been to Leeds, South Dakota? Only about half of you. Okay, all right. So that is where the Sanford Underground Research Facility is located, is in Leeds, in that community. And I'm going to orient you globally. So there are currently 16 underground laboratories in the world. There is really only one in the United States, and that is SURF. So America's underground lab is in South Dakota. There is the one that you see up there called WIP, which is the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, which is located in Carlsbad, New Mexico area, and it is mostly isolation for nuclear waste. There are a few minimal science experiments that happen there. The other one that you see in North America, that is Snow Lab, and Snow Lab is in Sudbury, Canada, in an active nickel mine. So SURF is, of course, located in the former Homestake gold mine, but we don't do any mining today. It is fully dedicated to science, and that's really unusual. Most of the underground labs around the world are located in active mines. So we're not competing with the mining industry to do the work that we do every day. And that, it actually matters a lot. All right, so on the surface, so I mentioned that the lab is located in the former Homestake gold mine. The Homestake gold mine was one of the most prolific gold mines for 125 years. Most recently owned by the Barrick Gold Mining Corporation. Barrick dedicated or donated the property in 2000 to the state of South Dakota. The South Dakota Science and Technology Authority, kind of like a port authority, so we're sort of a quasi-governmental entity, was established, and T. Denny Sanford did give $70 million to help convert an active gold mine into a world-leading science facility. The state also gave an initial $40 million, and then Governor Mike Rounds was really instrumental in South Dakota actually having that underground facility, because there was a U.S. competition for that site, and the former Homestake mine won that award. We are funded federally through the U.S. Department of Energy, and this year's federal allocation was $44 million. And that is for daily operations, moving people and stuff, mile underground, safety, all of the infrastructure necessary, etc. And this is the underground footprint created by 125 years of mining. So what you're looking at there is 370 miles worth of underground tunnels from the surface all the way to the 8,000 foot level. So at its deepest, Homestake was mining 8,000 feet below the surface. Today, the 8,000 foot level up to about the 5,500 foot level is underwater. Water infiltrates every single day, and we have a really robust process to mitigate that water infiltration that happens all of the time. If you look at the screen, can you distinguish between the green and the yellow? Okay, so the two green vertical shafts are the way that we move people and stuff a mile underground. That is on the left, the Yates, and on the right, the Ross. And those are two 5,000 foot shafts from the surface to nearly a mile underground. The green horizontal line represents what's called the 4,850 foot level. So 4,850 feet below the surface. And that is where the majority of the science that we are doing today, where that happens. We actually do not have access to below the 5,000 today. When Homestake closed, eventually they shut off those water pumps, and it flooded up to, I think, like the 4,000-ish level. And so they actually spent the first couple of years dewatering back down low enough. But then all of that space would have been underwater for a significant period of time. What else? So the two yellow Vertical shafts, yes.
I'll ask you, so the fact that these tunnels are full of water, does that weaken the rest of the structure?
No, not at all, not at all. And we actually leave that water, we're not trying to de-water all the way down. One, because it's super expensive to pump all that water to the surface. And two, you got things that are potentially flammable, that if we de-watered and they dried out, could be hazardous. And so, yeah, we've kept the water level right about the 5,600 for the last several years. The yellow shafts, oh yes?
Where do you pump the water?
Oh, hang on one slide. Thank you for foreshadowing, I really appreciate that. The two yellow vertical shafts, those are ventilation shafts. And so what sits at the top of those are huge fans that actually draw air from the underground. So air goes down the Yates and the Ross, flow is the inflow. It goes throughout the underground. We use air doors and a wide variety of systems to make sure that space is being properly ventilated, and then that air is pulled back to the surface using those enormous fans. I'm going to use my pregnant pause here for a moment. Yes?
So the lower horizontal green line, that's underwater?
Yes, that's the 7,400. And the 7,400, there was some talk about the possibility at some point of science at the 7,400. The appetite amongst the physics community right now is not there. They don't necessarily see the need, and that would be a multi-billion-dollar process to get re-access to the 7,400. All right. So what do we do with the water? First of all, we try to prevent it from getting too far deep, because the deeper that water goes, the more it costs us to pump it back to the surface. So once it's back on the surface, it actually goes to our very own wastewater treatment plant. And our wastewater treatment plant treats that water, primarily removing dissolved solids. So as you can imagine, a lot of mining equipment underground for a while created quite a bit of iron, as well as natural iron and other things that would dissolve into that water. And then leftover ammonia from mining days. Ammonium nitrate was a primary explosive. And so that water goes to our wastewater treatment plant. We also use bioremediation, so little critters that love to particularly eat ammonia and heavy metals. And then that water, once it is treated, is actually returned to Gold Run Creek. If you go to Lead or Deadwood, Gold Run Creek is the creek that runs through those two communities. So why do we do science a mile underground? The reason that there are science labs underground globally is because some of the fundamental questions in physics can only be answered by detectors that are incredibly, incredibly sensitive. If we put those detectors on the surface, they would be bombarded by cosmic radiation. That's what you're seeing. That is not rain or snow or any other form of precipitation. It's cosmic radiation. So play along, hold your hand out. Pew, pew, pew. Like that's about how often a cosmic ray is striking the surface of your hand. They're ubiquitous. And basically unnoticed by us most of the time. However, if we put our detectors that are searching for dark matter, we'll talk about it in a little bit, and that are trying to study the nature of neutrinos, we'll talk about them in a little bit, all they would be doing is detecting that cosmic radiation, that cosmic background. So instead, we either build our detectors on the surface, as in our dark matter detector, or we build them underground, or LZ we moved underground. And then we use a mile of really, really dense rock as just a big giant shield and filter. So a mile underground at the 4850 level, if you were to hold your hand out, you'd be waiting 2 to 3 months. It's about 10 million times quieter a mile underground. That doesn't mean that doing dark matter research and neutrino research is easy. It just makes it barely possible by doing it a mile underground and removing that background. So the science at SURF is multidisciplinary. I mentioned the high energy physics, the neutrinos, and the dark matter. That is why we go a mile underground. But in addition, there's biology. When I taught biology years ago, I always said life finds a way. And so we have microbes and fungi and extreme organisms, extremophiles that are growing and evolving a mile underground. So biology is interesting in that environment. Geology and especially geothermal and enhanced geothermal studies can happen there. We've had a relationship for the past few years with Caterpillar. So Caterpillar has leased space underground at the 1700 level, and they've been doing R&D work in mining equipment, autonomous vehicles, people locators, underground, things like that. So kind of a wide variety. Currently, there are 30 different experiments that are happening on site, some extremely large and some relatively small. As a mention, very often people ask, well, what's going to result from this? And this just happens to be one little thing that could become a really big thing. So Dr. Tanvi Goval has discovered a microbe that catalyzes the conversion of gaseous carbon dioxide, so CO2 gas, into carbonate rock. Well, that could be really transformative in that there's potential to sequester excess carbon dioxide in the form of rock. And so she has applied for a patent. SD Mines has applied for a patent associated with that. That's just one little example of the kinds of things that, that are learned and discovered at SURF. The largest experiment that has ever been attempted on US soil is one that we are gearing up for currently and will be hosted at SURF, and that is the Deep Underground Neutrino Experiment, DUNE. That is an experiment to study the nature of neutrinos, neutrinos being the most abundant particle of matter in the universe. Literally trillions of them are passing through you and me every second, and yet we know virtually nothing about them, or very, very little about them. And so once this experiment is fully in place, neutrinos will be generated at Fermilab. Fermilab sits just outside of Chicago in Batavia. Though those neutrinos will be beamed through the Earth because they pass through all matter unimpeded, and will eventually come in contact with the neutrino detectors that we are currently building at SURF. And the goal is to understand the fundamental nature of matter. Why is there matter in our universe at all? And our physics friends believe that the neutrino and understanding the nature of the neutrino will help answer that question amongst other questions. This experiment involves, my slide is outdated, more than 1,500 collaborators from nearly 40 countries, 200 plus institutions globally. No single country could possibly host and pay for and do this level of experiment. So to get to where these neutrino detectors are located, I'm going to take you on just a short little field trip. You are looking at the Ross head frame, which sits right above that 5,000-foot shaft. You're now walking down the ramp to get to the cage. The cage is the people conveyance that moves people and stuff from the surface down to the 4850 level. All right, now we're getting in the cage. Everybody's got their PPE on. And initially, nobody turns their cap lamp on, and there's no electricity inside the cage, so there's no lights. But eventually, somebody turns their cap lamp on. This trip takes about 10 minutes from the surface to get to the 4850 level. That is the amount of time you want it to take. Back in the mining days, they got there in 3 minutes. Hell no. Time for us is on a different priority level, and so it's about a 10-minute ride. So when the cage door opens here, you will be at what's called the 4850 station, which is where, when you were going to get back on the cage, when you look at those walls, they sort of look fake. And that's because that space has been excavated, and then we installed what's called ground support. So ground support means that we're going to put rock bolts into the walls, we're going to put wire mesh over them, we're going to then, in high traffic areas, spray it with liquid concrete, okay? So that's why that space looks man-made, because it is reinforced with that ground support. All right, raise your hand when you see the person. So you are looking at one of the largest pieces of equipment. Help your friends find the guy in the picture. It's a rock bolter. So it actually puts these rock bolts in the walls to install the ground support. How do we get that really, really big piece of equipment a mile underground? Piece by piece, yep. Now you have to remember that these things are not designed as Legos. They don't design them necessarily to be taken apart, but that's what our folks do. When this equipment needs to get underground, it comes to the surface, it is disassembled, and then after being disassembled into bite-sized pieces, then either it goes in the cage that people ride in, or if it'll still fit in the shaft, but it's too big to go in the cage, we hang it underneath the cage. It's called a slung load. And then we very slowly lower it from the surface to the 4850. We have a group of staff that are called master riggers, because these aren't like nice square pieces of equipment, and figuring out where your center of mass is so that you're going to hang it so that it doesn't swing in the shaft, that would be bad. To get it underground, over the last couple years, we did more than 400 of these slung loads to move equipment underground without a single incident of any degree. And so that takes a safety culture, it takes talent, it takes preparation, and you sort of build your credibility like one event at a time, and they're really darn good at it. Yes? Okay, so I wish we were in the hoist room, because I would love to show you the cable. So the cable is about this big around. There's 6,000 continuous feet of this steel cable. The center of the cable has hemp to give it some flexibility. It weighs about 27,000 pounds, one cable. And since I worked at SURF, which is how many years? Good listeners, 8 years. We have replaced one cable in that time. However, it is visually inspected every day, and we run electric current through it regularly, and that actually looks for any minor spots that would be problematic. And so, basically never, or very, very infrequently. All right, so the deep underground neutrino experiment requires caverns that are about a football field and a half in length and about 7 stories tall. This is halfway excavated. This is that same cavern fully excavated about a year ago. We took this picture about a year ago because now they're working on actually putting in the infrastructure because eventually this will be completely filled with the dune neutrino detectors. But yeah, they're spectacular. There's 2 of this size, and then a central utility cavern that's about half the height, but a little bit longer in length. Yes?
When you excavated, you knocked out all that rock.
Yes.
Did you crush it and get the gold out of it?
So, the answer is no. Well, the answer is yes, then no. So we crushed the rock, we brought it to the surface, and that rock was then deposited in the open cut. So the big hole in lead that is remnant from surface mining, 2 reasons for that. Reason 1, when Barrick donated the property, part of the agreement was that we wouldn't do any extracting, okay? And reason number 2 is then when we did the programmatic study for Dune, part of that involved contacting regional tribes. And we also made a commitment to regional tribes that we would never, as the South Dakota Science and Technology Authority, do any extraction. Science is industry. Even though we are doing primarily fundamental research, where we don't necessarily know what we learn from it will do for us, like what's the widget we're going to make at the end, fundamental research has to be done, otherwise we never get there. And globally, that fundamental research is typically funded at the federal level or at the national level. And fundamental research in high energy physics in the United States is funded by the US Department of Energy. We like to talk about this from a taxpayer perspective as return on an investment. So if we think about the fact that the state has invested $75 million, so $40 million initially, and then a total of $35 since the original investment, that has resulted in $1.3 billion being reinvested in the state through primarily federal dollars, but also private funding, for a 17 times ROI to the state of South Dakota. And so, yes, science, even fundamental science, is industry, and there is a positive economic impact or benefit. And the Dune experiment was going to happen somewhere in the world. That experiment was of global physics importance. It was going to happen somewhere. It's happening in South Dakota. And so we will be the sort of the recipients of all of the positive things that result from that. I'll also mention that the Deep Underground Neutrino Experiment, DUNE, won't actually start data collecting until about 2030. That's when the detectors will be fully installed, the neutrino beam will be ready, et cetera, et cetera. And the physicists need about 30 years worth of data. So that's an additional 30-year commitment to the state of South Dakota for the experiment. Lastly, our outreach programs. This past year, our education team worked with 22,000 students in the state. And I put this up here explicitly as an eye chart to show you that we also have a really strong commitment to providing opportunities for the universities and tribal colleges within our state. And those partnerships are important and matter to us deeply. And with that, I want to thank you.
Any other questions? Was there ever a thought for an electron accelerator to be put as part of?
So there is a low energy accelerator underground. It's called CASPAR. And so CASPAR is an experiment to actually, it's an astrophysics experiment that is happening at SURF. It's a low energy particle accelerator that is studying nuclides, so how heavier elements were generated historically.
If you go to Denver, you lose about 25 to 30% partial pressure of oxygen.
Yeah.
That's a mile up.
Yep.
If you go a mile down, and actually you gain a little more than that, but nevertheless, is your pressure adjusted? Or do you go down there and you feel a little better?
So my ears pop when I ride the cage. So there is a bit of a pressure change. But in terms of the percent of oxygen in the air, we all wear oxygen monitor, gas detectors. And so the percent oxygen stays right at that, 20%. But the partial, like the actual pressure, the total pressure changes a little bit, but not the partial pressure. Yes?
So why did they stop mining gold? Were they running out of gold? Was it getting too expensive?
So if you remember about the year 2000, the price of gold was about $400 an ounce. And they were mining 8,000 feet below the surface. So you don't have a positive, it's just not worth it at that point. And there is definitely still gold in the Black Hills. There's no question. We have prospector groups coming in, larger mining companies coming back in. Now that the price of gold, I don't know, where are we at, 4,000 an ounce these days? 5? Holy buckets. So yeah, there's significant renewed interest again. But yeah, it just wasn't financially reasonable at the time. All right? Thank you.
Have you do our drawing.
Oh yeah, got to do the drawing.
We have a 50-50 drawing, so
All right, so what do I win?
you don't want to, sorry.